The AC Infinity Ionframe Evo6 is actually the first light from them that we have ever checked out, and I am really excited to dig into this one. Just like the packaging on their grow tents, the box for the light also uses a very thick cardboard as the outer shell, which is great to see. Having things shipped to Hawaii over the last couple of years has really made me appreciate how important that is, and every one of the boxes that we have received from AC Infinity has survived the trip, which is not something that I can say about most packages. Inside the box is the light itself wrapped in a clear plastic bag, along with several blocks of high-density foam to keep it safe in shipping. In the back left corner is the accessories box, and opening it up shows us the instruction manual, the accessories baggie, a 10-foot 6-inch or 320cm UIS connection cable, and a shorter 2-foot or 61cm UIS connection cable. There is also a 10-foot 6-inch or 320cm driver power extension cable and the light controller. Next to that, in its own foam, is the driver itself, which has an attached 8-foot 0-inch or 244cm power cable. With all of that out of the way, we can go ahead and unfold the light, which will open up to its full size of roughly 33 inches by 33 inches, or 83 centimeters by 83 centimeters. After that, I went ahead and flipped the light over so that I could attach the driver, and I really like what they have done here. Inside of the accessories baggie, you will find the driver brackets, along with a bag of screws that you are going to need to install it either on the light or remotely on a wall. To mount it on the light, you will want to have the fingers of the bracket pointing away from the bottom of the driver like this, which will let it rest properly on the middle two bars of the light. If you want to install it remotely on a wall, you would just flip the bracket over, as that way it can sit flush against the wall, and you would use the long openings to put your screws into to attach it. Once I had all 4 of the screws started into the driver, I went ahead and tightened them up with my Leatherman, and now it is time to get it onto the light. As you can see, the driver fits perfectly right where it goes, and the shorter driver connection to the light can get clicked right into the matching end on the light itself, and once it is connected, you can just slide the light back so there isn't any slack wire getting in the way. AC Infinity also included the longer extension cable for remote mounting, but we will talk more about that later. Once the driver is in place, you just need to grab the 4 thumb screws from the accessories bag and screw them through the bracket into the frame of the light bars. As long as you have everything lined up correctly, this will be a super easy process and nothing should bind up. A nice side effect of this very secure mounting of the driver to the light bars means that the light cannot fold back up while you are hanging it, which is something that I have had to deal with in the past with other folding lights. Once the driver is in place, we can connect the driver to the light controller using the shorter UIS cable, and to do so, you just need to remove the rubber plug from the port on the driver and plug in the cable between the 2 pieces. You can use the light at full power without the controller connected, but you will need to connect the light to the controller to change the dimmer levels or turn the light off once it is plugged in. To hang the light up, I'm going to go ahead and use the included wire and clip sets that are in the accessories bag, along with the 2 ratcheting hangers that are in there as well. I like that the wire sets are very low profile once they are connected to the hard points that are already a part of the light. They only take up 6 inches or 15 centimeters of space. Looking at the driver mounted on top of the light now, you can see that AC Infinity makes it really easy to see all of the electrical specifications, which a lot of companies have started removing from their drivers. It is little things like this that really make me like these Ionframe lights, and I can't wait to start testing this thing out to see how well it does. From this angle, you can easily see how the UIS cable runs from the driver to the controller, and there is just enough slack to stick the controller to the front of the light without there being a lot of extra getting in the way. You can see how the controller connects to the light here, and there are actually a couple of magnets inside the controller that let it stick directly to any part of the metal frame like I am showing here, and that will also allow you to stick it directly to the metal plate on the outside of their tents if you want to be able to control the light from outside, which is another really nice feature. To do that though, you will need to use the much longer UIS cable, as this short one will not get you any further than the light itself. The dimming function on this light is not as adjustable as some of the other lights that we have seen, with it only having settings from 0 to 10. Once we get to the par level tests, we will talk about what each of these settings mean and how that will affect the brightness and the power draw. Remember earlier when I mentioned that 10-foot 6-inch or 320cm driver power extension cable? Well, to use it, all you have to do is disconnect the driver from the light by slightly twisting the connector, and then just add the extension between them. That will give you a total cable length of just about 11 foot 6 inches, or 350 centimeters of length to run your driver remotely outside of the tent, which can be a really important feature for folks in warmer climates to help reduce the heat load inside of the tent itself. I have wondered for years why companies have not done something like this, and AC Infinity is the first light that I have checked out that seems to be doing it. I love that you can either have the super short cable with no extra wire to deal with if you are mounting the driver inside the tent on the light, or attach the extension cable when you need to run the driver as a remote option. This just seems to give you the best of all worlds, and I hope that other light manufacturers start copying this feature. I have now hung the light inside of the AC Infinity 4-foot-by-4-foot grow tent that we checked out a little while back, and I will leave a link to that video in the description below if you missed it, as this is the size of tent that they recommend for this light. As always, I prefer to squeeze the largest light possible into a tent, and in the future I will actually be checking out the Ionframe Evo 8 in this same tent, so if that is something that you are interested in, make sure to watch for that video to go live. I am also going to make another video as well checking out what the light levels look like with this light inside of their 3-foot-by-3-foot tent, as it will just barely fit in there, and I think that we would see some really great light levels in a tent that size. Earlier I said that you could mount this driver remotely on a wall, and that is what this setup would look like in my space. There is plenty of length to reach all the way out of the tent to the driver, and then the longer UIS cable will also reach back over to the tent itself for the light controller, and you can see that I have the magnets holding it in place on there. You could also screw the controller directly to the metal plate, but I prefer the flexibility of using the magnet and being able to just move things around. With all of that said, I love how this light looks inside of a grow tent. The dark grays and silver tones look really great, especially when it is inside of their grow tent. But now let's dig into the light levels and see just how well the AC Infinity Ionframe Evo 6 can light up their 4-foot-by-4-foot grow tent. First up, we are going to be measuring the PAR levels with the Ionframe Evo 6 hung at 12 inches above the sensor, and if you look at the PAR map on the right side of the screen, we are showing things a little differently this time. The green square is the 4-foot-by-4-foot shape of the tent, but I am also showing the rough size and shape of the light itself with the gray box in the center of the map. This light is around 33 inches by 33 inches, which means that there is going to be about 7 inches of space between the edges of the light and the tent walls. That is going to be why we are going to see some light fall off at the lower hanging heights. The central area is sitting at 1438 PAR, with the levels directly under the light being very solid as well. However, as we get to the outer edges of the tent, you can see that we have a lot of light drop off with the far corners ranging from 249 to 282 PAR. As I mentioned earlier, what I think will be really interesting is to see what the light levels would be in a 3-foot-by-3-foot tent, and I am definitely going to check that setup out as well. Moving the light up to 18 inches away from the sensor will show the PAR values in the center of the tent dropping off, but the numbers around the edges will actually start to come up. This is because the light is now more able to splash out and get reflected on the walls to even out the light levels, and this will continue for the next couple of hanging heights. The light levels in the center of the canopy at both 12 and 18 inches are going to be way too high for most plants, and it can be a real pain to work on your plants under a light that is that close anyways. If you do want to use them at this hanging height, however, I would really recommend using the dimming function to reduce the brightness, as you do have a real chance of light burning your leaves with PAR levels over 1000, which is what you would be seeing with the light hung this close. Looking at the power draw of this light, we were pulling 530 watts from the wall with it turned all the way to 100%, and we tested it at all the available light levels as well to give you an idea of how much power it will pull from the wall at the different settings. With the dial set to 8, the light was pulling 380 watts from the wall. When we moved it to 6 on the dial, the light was pulling 303 watts. With the light set to 4, the light was pulling 225 watts from the wall. Finally, moving the setting down to 2 on the dial brought the power draw to 145 watts. We also have the rest of the readings showing on the screen as well. I just didn't want to have to read all 10 of them out loud, or really, I didn't want to have to make you listen to me read them all out loud. Next up, we are going to move the light to 24 inches above the sensor, and in the center of the tent we are going to see 879 par, while it is going to be between 375 and 492 par at the corners of the space. This would be a really great spot to hang the light for a lot of the things that folks are going to typically be growing in a tent like this, especially with being able to dim the light to your desired level. We did a lot of measurements with the light dimmed as well, which is what the par X numbers that you see are for. With the light hanging at 24 inches like this, and the center par level at 879 with the light turned all the way up, the way to figure out what the levels would be at different settings is to multiply the par reading by the par X number that matches the setting that you want to try. Let's say that we have the light set to 6 on the dial, then we would multiply 879 by the par X number, which for 6 would be 0.61, giving us 536 par. You can do that with any of the readings on these charts, and it should get you pretty close to the right par level. Now that we have moved the light up to 30 inches above the sensor, we are seeing a maximum of 716 par in the center area, with the light levels staying pretty consistent between 378 and 495 par at the far corners. I do want to say that having the ability to use the light controller remotely at the end of the longer UIS cable has been a really nice change, as it lets me easily adjust the dimmer settings as I am pulling all of these readings without having to actually open the tent all the way up, which is saving me a lot of time. Testing these lights in a 4-foot by 4-foot tent means that I need to take almost 1,600 separate readings, and anything that can speed that up makes my life a lot easier. We do get asked quite a bit what sensor we are using to get all of our par readings, and we are currently using the Apogee Instruments SQ420 par sensor. It is fairly affordable as far as these things go, with the only drawback being that I have to plug it into my laptop to see the readings, as it is just the sensor. If you want to check it out, I will leave a link to it in the description down below for you to check out after you finish watching the rest of the video. Next up, we have the light hung at 36 inches above the sensor, and we are looking at 620 par in the center of the tent, with between 380 and 480 in the far corners. These are actually really decent numbers considering how far the sensor is from the light at this point, and while I would usually say that you shouldn't be hanging the light this far from the plants with these light levels, these numbers are still very serviceable for a lot of different plants that you may be growing, and the light levels across the board are actually pretty great. If you are flowering out cannabis plants, these light levels are going to be too low for most photo periods as they only get 12 hours of light, but a lot of garden plants would be very happy with these levels. Finally, we are going to take a look at this light hung at 48 inches above the sensor, and we can see that we are just barely over 500 par in the center of the tent, with the outer corners ranging from 334 to 414 par. For the amount of electricity you would be using having this light at full blast hung at this height, I would not really recommend using it like this. If these are the light levels that you are looking for with your specific plants, you would be much better off hanging the light at 24 inches with the dimmer set to 6, as you would be using almost half the electricity while still getting fairly similar light levels. That is the benefit to using a light with a dimming function. You can really save quite a bit on electricity costs by simply dimming the light a bit. To be honest, I love this light and what it brings to the table. There is so much flexibility with how you can set up this light in your space that it should work for most people. If you want to keep everything inside of the tent with the driver mounted on the light, or if you want to run the driver remotely with the controls on the front of the tent, this light has you covered with everything that AC Infinity has included inside of the box. As I mentioned before, I do want to test this light out inside of their 3-foot by 3-foot tent, as I think it would be an absolute monster in there. But even in a tent this size, you should see some incredible growth from your plants, no matter what those are. A big thank you to AC Infinity for supporting the channel, and if you want to check out their Ionframe 6 or any of their other gear for yourself, make sure to click on our link to their website in the description or pinned comment down below, and use the discount code GEEKS at checkout to receive 10% off your entire order.